The DA threatens legal action should Defence Minister Thandi Modise agree to a request to pay the legal fees for her predecessor, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, in a corruption trial starting in June. The former National Assembly Speaker is facing 12 counts of corruption and 1 of money laundering on allegations that she accepted a 2.3 million rand bribe from a military contractor while she was the Minister of Defence. For more on this conversation, we're now joined by DA Defence spokesperson Kobus Marais. Kobus, appreciate your time this evening. Now, let's start off with your reaction to the story, which has developed somewhat over the last few days.
Thank you very much, Hugo, for the opportunity, and it's very nice to speak also to your viewers. Listen, it's very clear that from our side that it's arrogant from the previous minister, previous speaker, to want the Department of Defence, who she has alleged defrauded out of money in a personal capacity where she's been advantaged and taken benefits from, to expect the same department to now foot her bills, her legal bills. This charges and the corruption charges is nothing to do with her official duties as the Minister of Defence. In fact, as I've said, it's in her personal capacity, and it's where she has gone too far and she has defrauded the department. Now, the anti-corruption legislation and policy of government is very, very clear that when a member of the executive is charged with corruption and racketeering and fraud, where they've personally benefited from that and the government has been negatively impacted, then you can't even expect to be considered to be supported. Now, first of all, she should never have asked that, and the Major General Modise shouldn't have even entertained a request, and the current Minister of Defence, in my opinion and our opinion, has nothing to consider. She must reject it with the contempt it deserves. There's absolutely no merit in this case. And, it's typical of what we have come to learn from government, this entitlement that they can do nothing wrong and they can do whatever they want to. And it's just acceptable because it's their time to eat. It's unacceptable.
Well, Kobus, there are a number of issues for us to consider, I'd like to imagine. Now, one of those issues is that this obviously has nothing to do with the state. The charges are in the personal capacity of the former Speaker of the National Assembly. So the brazen nature of that request has many, many implications. Now, what do you read into that request?
Well, obviously, I've said is this arrogance and entitlement. One, you will also recall that it was the same ex-minister who has abused the VIP jets for the ANC, NEC members to fly to Zimbabwe to have a meeting with ZANU-PF in the time of COVID. And you will recall that at that stage, the president did found her guilty and he charged her with a 1-month salary. And they've also the ANC undertook to pay the cost, or at least a contribution to that cost. It was also the same minister that brought in the girlfriend of her late son from Africa without any documentation, which is, in layman's terms, that is human trafficking in smuggling illegal persons into the country and bypassing the official, customs and home affairs, all those requirements. So this is not the first time that this person and the previous minister is involved in controversial transactions, and we know that there is, although they talk about accountability, they talk about consequence management, we never see any consequences happening. That's the same that came from the state capture report, and it seems like there's this entitlement that you can do whatever we want to because we are in power, and it's like they say, it's our time to eat. So now anything is justified, and it's about time that we get some form of discipline, not only in government, but in the Department of Defense as well. Remember, we sit with a Department of Defense who do not have the money to maintain the prime mission equipment to defend South Africa, our territorial integrity, and the safety of our people. And then they are just spending money as if there's, it's like money growing on a tree and you can just pick it off. That is typical. And if we don't do something, and if South Africa and the voters and the taxpayers don't take notice of what is happening, there's a bleak picture coming up if we do not act very, very specifically to reject this kind of action and behavior. It's typical, and one must also remember that everybody involved was part of cadre deployment. I actually pay a lot of respect to the acting CFO, the acting Secretary of Defense, and with the greatest of respect, the current minister, to come out and so blatantly, show their resistance to this, to put it very mildly. So while I support that and while I appreciate that, I still say there's nothing for the minister to consider. She must reject it with the contempt it deserves, because there's no merit whatsoever in this request from Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula.
Now, there's the statement that came from the Defence Minister Thandi Modise's office says that General Modise's handling of the matter without following existing protocols is tantamount to disrespect of executive authority in the Department of Defence. Or are you going to be pushing for any form of discipline, or do you feel that the matter, and as far as that office is concerned, is under control? Absolutely not.
In fact, I mean, it's not only bad discipline and undermining the authority of the minister and the Secretary of Defense, but it's also, show a disrespect to his oath of office. I mean, he's supposed to be the highest person in the Department of Defense and the National Defense Force with regards to legal knowledge and legal work. Now, if Major General Modise, do not know the legislation and the regulations and the policies, my goodness gracious, then it is no wonder we have got so much problems and challenges in the Department of Defense. It's no problem that in many cases the morale of the people are so low, because there's no actions, there's no responses, there's no consequences. There is just nothing happening. If you are, in the right faction, and if you are aligned to the right people in leadership roles, then you can basically do whatever you want to. So in my opinion, and I've said that in my statement as well, Major General Modise should be suspended with immediate effect, and he should not be in the office, and there should be a thorough investigation into his conduct and his behavior, and if it needs be, then he should be charged and brought before a disciplinary hearing because of what he has done. The bar and the standard for people like himself should be so much higher when it comes to the interpretation and the application of law, policy, and regulations. Who else is supposed to be so knowledgeable about this than him? And if he is acting so undisciplined and so blatantly in a biased way, again, that is totally unacceptable. And there must be consequences. There should be consequences. The Minister of Defence and Military Veterans, Minister Thandi Modise, has promised us over and over that heads will roll and there will be consequences. Now, here's a perfect opportunity to show us whether her words has got any value, any meaning, or whether this is just hollow words and words that they take from a script and trying to portray as if they are serious. Here's an opportunity. Our challenge to her is act now and act decisively and make an example of Major General Modise.
So let's talk about the measures that the opposition proposes to ensure greater accountability and transparency in the use of public funds, especially concerning legal expenses related to corruption cases involving high-ranking government officials. Now, if this internal whistle had not been blown, who knows? In fact, who knows what else is happening within the ranks of government?
Exactly, and I mean, more specifically within the Department of Defence, we have asked many times questions, and when they don't want to respond to that, even to submissions to get PIA applications through, they often come with a delay action, and they basically wants to put the onus on you to charge them in a court of law, to force them to release the information or to show us what they have done. This is not the first time, and it will certainly be not the last time, if this government is re-elected as the government of the day. It is just unacceptable that they are not prepared to be open and frank with us in Parliament, first of all, because we are the representatives of the people of South Africa. And secondly, they should take a leaf out of the lessons and the prescripts to how to develop healthy civil-military relations. There are fantastic people in the Defence Force that has got the knowledge at universities, at the military academy, how to foster and how to promote civil-military relations, to develop a healthy, proper relationship between civilians and the Defence Force, also to improve the image of this Defence Force, which in my opinion is anyway needed if they want to convince National Treasury to give them more money. As long as they are showing such poor discipline when it comes to finances, then National Treasury will be reluctant to give the Defence Force the money that they so desperately need, because National Treasury has said many times they are wasting money, and we see that in the Auditor General's report every single year, every single quarter, that there are so much wasted money and they don't recuperate and recover the money, which means it is a debt loss for the taxpayer. Someone benefited. If you took a look at this whole project Tusano with the Cubans, billions of rands, a debt loss to South Africa, where there's other South Africans that could have done those services to those vehicles, people that are currently unemployed with all the skills, military veterans and others are doing that. And it seems like current government is so much focused on their personal objectives and their personal projects to benefit themselves, that they are just not prepared to put South Africa and the current population and civilians of South Africa as the first priority. And is that not the primary function of any government of the day? To act in the best interest of civilians and not yourself and not your own or your own party's interest? That is not happening. And as long as that is not happening, I see a very dark future for our National Defence Force. We need to start to reprioritize our National Defence Force.
Sorry, Kobus, if you allow me to interject, because we're running short of time, and you speak about the National Defence Force, which paves way for my next question, and that's the involvement of the SANDF and the DRC. And there have been multiple reports about how ill-prepared or ill-equipped the SANDF are in the DRC. Just to give us your comments on that very quickly, please.
Well, I've been on record by saying that there's a very good reason why the United Nations is withdrawing from the DRC. After more than 20 years, 25 years plus, it's about time that the DRC take responsibility for its own safety and protection. Plus, they need the support from the East African Community Bloc, those countries in the East African Community Bloc, plus the African Union. It is not a South Africa problem. Yes, we can, be involved in regional stability and peacekeeping missions, but then there must be a strong national interest at heart and under threat, and it must pose a serious threat to our national security. in South Africa. In my opinion, none of that is anymore present and prevail there. So it makes the new deployment that the president has authorized with 2,900 soldiers of nearly 2.4 billion rand per year, totally underfunded at this stage, which means that there's nothing coming from National Treasury, there's nothing coming from the SADC countries, there's nothing coming from the African Union, and we don't have that kind of money in the Defence Force, and it means that they will neglect our prime mission equipment, the maintenance, the upgrade, the replacement of that just further, and it means that we will go back and we deteriorate. Remember the M23s in the DRC. They are not the same M23s that we have defeated a number of years ago. We don't even have air support in the form of the Rooivalk anymore. We've got limited cargo and logistical support in the name of the Oryx, whereas in the past we had 5 Oryx and 3 Rooivalk constantly available. None of that is available. The M23s are using precision target bombs. They are using surface-to-air missiles. They are using drone bombs, things that we don't even always have a defense against. And it means that if we cannot afford to be there and cannot afford to properly resource and equip our soldiers, we must withdraw them from the DRC. We must rebuild our defense force with a reprioritized budget application. We must invest in our prime mission equipment, in new technology. We must protect our land borders, our maritime domain, as well as our air domain. Only once we have got all of that in place and we have got the money that we can afford, then we can most certainly be involved in regional peacekeeping missions. We have got nothing against that in principle. However, charity starts at home. And as long as we are involved in deployments like now, the new one in the DRC, that doesn't make sense whatsoever, except for the president and maybe some of his ANC colleagues. But we will be so much more vulnerable against bad actors. We've got no actual protection from the seas. We have got very bad and poor radar and communication and surveillance equipment. We've got no surveillance capabilities from the Air Force side that is supposed to operate from 35 Squadron in Cape Town. We've got little or no drones, UAVs. So we have to invest in new technology so that we can have a 24/7 surveillance of not only our land border areas, but our maritime domain as well. Anybody that has got the access to the technology can now go and look and see the enormous increase in maritime traffic around our coast because of the problems in the Red Sea. We have got no defense. Should something happens on our maritime areas around South Africa, like a disaster, like an emergency, then our Air Force has got little or no capabilities to respond to that. If we have got a situation like the Oceanos many years ago, who sank on the Wild Coast, where the Air Force played a critical role to save all of those people on board, we don't have that anymore, unfortunately. And if we don't rebuild that capabilities, then we will have, one of these days, nothing to offer to Africa as well.
Kobus Marais, DA Defence spokesperson, appreciate your time. You're watching News of Prime. A few more conversations to look forward to when we come back.